Hello and welcome to Fearless Authenticity with me, Jeanne Sparrow. This is my podcast about finding success in the gifts of who we truly are. These are conversations with people who know what that looks and feels like. And this is done in the hopes that it'll be an inspiration for you to find ways to use your unique gifts in pursuing your passions, making your dreams come true, and engaging with the world in the way you were really created to serve. It's also a lesson in that for me as well. And I hope this gets deep because that's where we really find the best stuff. But don't get it twisted, because this podcast is about the fun of life. Because if it ain't fun, it ain't worth doing. So let's dare to be brave, be free, be you together. Now, today, my next guest is an honor to have him. He wears many hats and wears them well. He is a physician, best-selling author, and television host from The Doctor, Celebrity Fit Club. You've also seen him on every single talk show from Oprah to Rachael Ray, every news network. You've also probably read one of his #1 New York Times best-selling books or seen his work in Newsweek, Time, Essence, and more. He's been honored by many organizations, including the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. He served on President Obama's Council on Fitness, Health, and Nutrition, along with supporting numerous causes related to improving our health. He is passionate about it. He's an alumnus of Harvard and Columbia University, attended Dartmouth Medical School, and graduated from the University of Chicago Pritzker School of Medicine. He's a proud husband and father and a genuinely good guy. I am proud to say I know this man, and I'm honored to welcome the inimitable Dr. Ian Smith to the Fearless Authenticity Podcast. Hey.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me. Nice word, by the way. I'm a wordsmith. I love that word. It's great to see you as always. I'm always happy to see you.
Always good to be together with you, Ian. I want to start off by talking about your new projects. I mean, because here's the thing. We've known each other since we both first started out in the business at NBC5 in Chicago. And it has always, I knew you had the intention of doing many things from the very beginning. So the first thing I want to start with is what you're doing now, because you have 2 books coming out in the spring. And one is in alignment with the health piece, but then another one is a mystery murder novel based in Chicago with media personalities. So is there one that is kind of similar to me? And does she kill anybody?
Well, stuff happens, and we'll get to that in a second. Let me start with the nonfiction that I'm known for, which is this is it, by the way. I don't know if people can see it.
Nice.
It's called the MetFlex Diet, and it comes out in April. And this is my 24th book. And this book is about how to improve your metabolic flexibility. People don't know what that is, but metabolic flexibility basically says that our body has the ability to burn different types of fuels that we consume. We typically consume fats and carbs. And unfortunately, many of us are unable to burn both of them equally well. We're either good carb burners or we're good fat burners. This book makes, and by the way, when you can't switch and burn both of them effectively, you are considered to be metabolically inflexible. And so I'm trying to increase your metabolic flexibility that allows you, hey, if you're going to have a lot of pasta, no problem. My metabolism can take care of that. If you're going to have a lot of fried foods, no problem. So this is a fun book. It's 6 weeks. People lose up to 20 pounds in 6 weeks. I do a group online. If people are interested, they can email me, iansmithfitbody@gmail.com. We have about 1,000 people who are doing it together early, but the book comes out in April. And it's just a fun, good book, lots of food choices. And anyone who's written or anyone who has seen or read one of my books will be very surprised, because there are meal items on here, Jeanne, that I've never included in a diet, because there is a little bit of keto involved. And you cycle in and out of keto. And so it's very different for me.
All right. Well, as a menopausal woman now, anytime I hear anybody say anything about metabolism, because I never understood how important metabolism was until mine stopped working in certain ways. And I was just like, how does it just turn off like this? Like, it was just like one day it was fine and the next day. So I'm glad you got some answers, my brother.
Okay, yeah, I'll send you a copy of it. And the second book, my other project, which I'm very excited about, is called The Overnights. And The Overnights is this is the 3rd installment of my mystery series, my Ashe Cayne mystery series. It is a Chicago-based private investigator who's a former detective with CPD, and he takes on very few cases, only those that interest him. He left CPD because some bad things happened and he wouldn't toe the company line and he wouldn't protect the city. So he left, opens up his own shop, hangs his own shingle up, and he takes on cases. And he's a fun, great character. I love this guy. I wish I could be him one day. His name is Ashe Cayne. This is book number 3 in the series. It's already been optioned to become a TV show. And this book, Jeanne, The Overnight, is about a big media war between 2 of Chicago's premier television female hosts, anchors, and they're during sweeps. It's in sweeps, and they are vying for number 1, and things get really crazy. And those who live in Chicago, though I know this is a bigger reach in Chicago, you are going to recognize a lot of characters in this book, and all the streets and all the restaurants are truly Chicago city. So it's a really, if you're not from Chicago, this is a great way to learn Chicago and to learn where great places are to eat. If you are from Chicago, you're gonna be right at home.
I love it. You know what? I love getting to know cities through books. And I think detective novels give you a lot of leeway with that, because you can go to some shadier spots in town and make it a legitimate thing. But it is fascinating. When I realized you were writing mystery novels, I was like, okay, I didn't have this on my Ian Smith calendar or bingo card. So how did that come about? Is that something you've always wanted to do?
Well, you know, when you talk about being the authentic you and being who you are, I have always loved mysteries. I've always wanted to write mysteries, but I never was public about it, because when I was growing up, the belief was that if you wanted to be a doctor, you had to be taken seriously. And so you needed to only talk about and kind of be about things that were very serious, science and health and medicine. And so it really, I felt like there was no room for me to express the other side of me. Yes, I'm a very serious person about health and wellness and being a physician, but I'm equally serious about creative and fiction writing. And so it wasn't until I became a very successful nonfiction author that I had the guts to go to my publisher. And I said, and you now have a new book deal, so you're going to have a relationship with a publisher and you'll learn like I learned. There's certain things you can and can't do. But I finally had the guts to go to them and say, listen, guys, you've made a lot of money off my diet books. And it's been very good for you, very good for me. But you must publish my fiction next. And I had developed enough leverage with the house, given my success, that I could actually demand that. And so I said, I'm a fiction writer. They're like, what? I said, I write fiction. I've been writing fiction for years. I got a whole, shelf of manuscripts I've written over the years, and I want to start publishing. And that's when it started.
So wait, let's back up a second, because one of the things that I love about you, and I remember we talked about this when we were younger and things, is that you have a very approachable manner when it comes to health and wellness. Like, yes, you are serious and you are an accountability partner, bar none. But there's also this part of you that does have that infectious smile and goes, you know what, this is life. And you incorporate it into that. Every time we've talked on air and you've come on as an expert to talk about the books and things, there is a lack of the judgment that often comes when we talk about fitness and weight, because there's so much psychological stuff that goes along with that. When did you make the choice? Because to me, that's who you are, right? That's how I see you. And I think that's and it seems pretty durable. I've known you a long time. I think I've earned the ability to say, I think I'm right about that. But was did that end up being a conscious choice where you're like, you know what, I'm never going to be that buttoned up dude. Even if I put on the suit, the tie, and the white coat, I'm not going to be that stereotypical, I'm really serious guy. Was that a conscious choice, or did you just go, I tried that on and it didn't fit? Like, how did you get to being able to do it, especially in the public way that you do it?
It was not a conscious choice. That's just who I am. And I knew from the very beginning that I was not going to be a doctor who was going to work 9 to 5, do clinics, do surgery, and that was it. It's just who I am as a person and how I've always seen life, even as a young person, by the way. Is I've always respected the finality of life. And that may sound a little morose, but it's true. I respect that life is going to end and it's unpredictable of when it ends. And therefore, whatever you have available to you, you need to be grateful, but you also need to maximize the opportunities. And so even though the era that you and I grew up in, it was like, well, you choose one path and you stay in that path, and that's what you're going to be until you retire and get your Social Security. And I never bought into that. I'm someone who has varied interests. I love different things. I'm not just left side or just right side. I'm a lot of things. And one thing I am is I love telling stories. I love reading stories. I love watching stories. I love stories. I love good stories. It could be anything. It could be a story about a country Western singer or a mob story. It doesn't matter. So it wasn't me making a conscious decision that I'm not going to be this button-up guy. It's just my conscious decision was I'm going to be who I am. And I've been that way even in medical school. I wasn't a typical medical student. I remember when I was at Dartmouth, I don't want to get emotional, but when I was at Dartmouth, I was like an odd man out because, I was a guy who loved music. I loved going out. I loved sports. I loved lifting weight. I loved all kinds of things. Meanwhile, a lot of the medical students were in the library 8 hours a day after school. I mean, it was and that just wasn't who I was. So I was literally, not only was I in the Great White Mountains up in New Hampshire, I was literally a fish out of water. Like, here I was, this black dude up in New Hampshire. I had all these interests, but I also was serious about becoming a doctor. I don't want to diminish that. I was just as serious about everyone else, but I didn't believe that I had to be a certain way to express my seriousness or become a good doctor. So no, I just decided this whole trip of life, I'm going to be who I am. And I'm going to be that unapologetically. And so it has served me very well. I'm always comfortable with who I am. I never feel uncomfortable. I'm never ashamed of who I am. I make mistakes. There are some things I would do differently, but I go to sleep every night feeling like I am Ian Smith and I do things the Ian Smith way and I'm proud of it, right or wrong. And that's just who I am. And I try to teach my kids the same way. Like, you got to be your own person. And you got to always be true to who you are. And I think if you do that, then it's not that you have regrets. I think what happens is, post-analysis, you say, oh, well, I could have done things differently, but I don't regret anything in my life.
And you know what's also interesting? I love all of that because I'm in complete alignment with it, because as the same thing has happened to me. When you are interested in so many different things, like you said, like our parents' generation was very much like, get that good job, you've gone to school, you've put in this time and this effort and the loans and the this and the that. And I remember my family being very confused about what I actually did. And especially once I started adding new things to it, like, once I got my footing in radio, start doing voiceover work, and then you start acting and you do this and you do that. And now I'm writing. And it's like, my friends used to make fun of me when I was younger and call me a Jamaican.
I was going to say that. I was going to say that. I knew you were going to say that.
And I was like, that's nothing to be ashamed of. I was like, I'm never bored. I'm always engaged with what I'm doing. But I remember a lot of people not only being confused, but actually discouraging me from it. Did you ever have moments where somebody challenged you on the choices you made and you had to make a stand on it? Or even, because I also realized when I got that there was that what I was doing was unusual for them, right? And that made me feel like you said, that fish out of water, like, well, I thought this is normal for me. This feels right. This fits on me.
My grandfather never went past the 6th grade. And he taught me the most that I've learned in life, even more than my Harvard professors, was my grandfather. And one of the things he always talked about was that you have to march to the beat of your drummer in life. And for me, there would be people who would either subtly or very overtly try to discourage or obstruct me. And I would laugh because I'm like, these people don't even know me. They don't realize you can't stop me. Charles Barkley had a great quote. I'll never forget it. When Charles Barkley was talking about how he thinks when he's trying to go to the basketball hoop into the rim. And he said, I will go over you, I will go around you, or I will go through you, but I'm going to the rim. And that's how I am. Like, if this is what I want to do, and this is my dream, and this is what I want to be, I'm going to do it. And so, yeah, I've had plenty of people, Jeanne, throughout the years question, raise their eyebrows. When I left medicine temporarily and started doing TV, oh my goodness, you should have heard it. You went to Harvard and all these great schools and all this time to be a doctor, and you're on TV? And then all of a sudden the TV starts popping off. So then what do they say? Oh my goodness, you're so great. So, my whole thing is I'm already there and I'm waiting for you. You'll eventually get here, but I'm already there. Yeah, I've never let it bother me. I've always had a nice, strong support system around me, which I think is important for people, by the way, like us, is to have people who say, hey, listen, I may not understand it, doesn't make sense to me, but I'm going to support you. That's important, right? Because if you're out there all alone, sometimes the pressure of it can be very, very overwhelming, right? But even to have that little release valve where someone says, I don't really understand it, but I'm with you. I'm behind you. You can do it. I've had that. And I appreciate those people in my life who have supported me. Every time I cut across the grain, I call it. I say some of the greatest people always at some point in their life, they cut across the grain. And I've had people when I cut across the grain who say, keep cutting, man, keep going.
I love that. And the support system is the key, because I think there are all times when many of us, when we do have that fish out of water feeling, that we don't feel like we have support. And that's when we start to doubt ourselves. At least I know that's how it happened for me. There are a couple times where I let that get to me. And those are the moments I regret, because it's easier to say, you know what, to chalk something up to your own decision and your own thing. But when you listen to somebody else that takes you off your square, as it were, then it becomes this whole other thing of, damn, why did I even listen to that person? But it's still a lesson as far as I'm concerned.
Let me say this real fast. Yesterday, I was on it. This is a great point, what you're trying to say. This is illustrative of that. I'm on a plane. My wife and I are on the plane yesterday. We're going from LA back to Chicago. We get onto the plane. The flight attendant says to us, I gave him our seat numbers, and I knew we were sitting next to each other in the middle of the plane. So it was a row against the window, aisle, 2 seats, aisle, row against the other window. So we were sitting in the middle seats next to each other. So I knew that she had to go down one aisle and I need to go down one aisle. I mean, that's the only way to do it. We're two. So I said to the flight attendant, he said, what seat number? I gave him seat number. He said, okay, you guys go down that aisle. I said, no, but we're not. I'm in D and she's in F. One of us has to go in the other aisle. No. You got to go to the side. Now, I knew, Jeanne, that I was right. It wasn't a question. And what do you think I did?
You went on and did I left what you want.
I followed what the man said, knowing darn well that was wrong. I get down there, we stand there, we're looking like two fools, and I can't get over to my seat because it has a thing in between. So I had to walk all the way back to the galley. Now the traffic is coming up. I can't get to the seat. And I wasn't upset at the flight attendant. You know, I was upset at me. I knew better than that. Instead of following my decision and what I knew, I let him take me off my game, and then I suffered the consequences. And that just happened to me. So when you said that, it made me think, it doesn't happen often, but when it happens, I get so upset at myself because, come on, Ian, you know better than that. Always follow your gut, follow your own intuition.
And the thing is, it's so hard because sometimes you're like, are you right? But the thing is if you can remember a moment as transient as that one, right? It doesn't really have an impact on your life as a whole. Imagine how, like, as irritable as that feels, imagine how you feel when you make a life decision based on what somebody else says. Like, that's always the thing where I go, that nothing has taken me so far off my path that I have felt like I've missed out on something.
Yes.
And that's the thing. Now, I am sure, though, that even with following your heart and having a support system and knowing that you have to be true to yourself, because it doesn't sound like there's any other option for you with that one. Because sometimes it's, my way or the highway, which one? And some of us have to live that way. But I'm also sure that you have had your share of challenges. As a Black man in academia alone, I can only imagine, especially at that time, what that might have been. I'm kind of guessing at what some of them are, because I know that some had to have happened in television as well, all these different places and all of the things that happen behind the scenes. What has been for you the most disappointing, heartbreaking, excuse me, I'm not sure what word I want to use, but the thing that has been the biggest setback for you in terms of something you were going for, didn't get, or went in a completely different direction than you thought it would, and you had to kind of reset and bounce back from that. What I want to know is, even if you don't share the specifics of what that was, what does the bounce back look like?
Sure. So I think everyone in their life, regardless of how successful they are, everyone has setbacks. I think that one of the setback that comes to me most recently was, it's not recent, but most current setback was when I was at NBC. I had a great career at NBC as a reporter. And of course, I was a reporter for local NBC in New York. I was a correspondent for NBC News National and for the Today Show. I had a great career there. And unfortunately, this was at a time when institutional racism was allowed to exist and go unchecked. Okay. And I don't use racism, that word, very lightly. I'm very, very intentional and very conservative when I use that. But there was institutional racism at the time. And the people who were the decision makers were absolutely inappropriate in how they made decisions and how they handled us. And so my career was going great. And all of a sudden, it just hit a brick wall, like out of nowhere. And I couldn't figure out, like, what, everything's going great. I'm working local, I'm working national, I'm living a great life, I'm enjoying it, I'm loving my work. I love to work in general. And all of a sudden, just hit a brick wall. And things just kind of fell apart. And it really was hard to say what was it that caused it to fall apart. But it was like a little thing here, a little thing there. And it just became additive. And all of a sudden, my agent and I are having this conversation. Where are you going to go next? I'm like, geez, I never thought I would ever leave NBC News, right? That was my thing. So I get this really lucrative offer from another network across the street. And even though my heart is like, I was just shocked. Like I'm not going to be here anymore because I had made the mistake that I tell people all the time that they should not make, which is I allowed my identity to meld into my career. That's a big mistake. I was Dr. Ian of NBC, not Dr. Ian. And then, oh yeah, well, he works at NBC. And I never have made that mistake, by the way. But anyway, the psychological torture I went through because I saw myself as this NBC guy. I get this huge offer from across the street. And I'm like, well, I got nothing else to do. So I pretty much, and it wasn't, the offer was great financially, but it wasn't what I wanted to do in my next step. It just wasn't. I didn't want to do it. And so I get this contract. I go to my big time agent's office, big agent in New York City. He's got this contract. And Jeanne, I couldn't sign it. I couldn't sign it. They had been negotiating and negotiating. We had the final. I sat there and pushed it away. I couldn't do it.
Ian.
I couldn't do it because Jeanne, signing that contract and doing what was on that paper was not what I wanted to do. I could have done it easily. It was a good job. Anyone else would have gone crazy. Yeah. But for what I wanted in my life and where I was at that time, that's not what I wanted in my life. And I had no money. Because I'd spent all my money, because money was not an object.
You was flossing.
I was flossing up and down Fifth Avenue. I had checks coming in left and right. So I wasn't working on it. I had no real savings, no other job prospects. And my agent thought I was crazy. Like, Ian, what are you doing? And so what happened was I ended up getting a book deal, my first book deal. And that book deal, thank you, God. To this day, I thank him. That book deal gave me enough money to live on and to pay my bills, not the money I was making as a correspondent, but Jeanne, it gave me enough money where I could eat and survive and still be who I was and what I wanted to be and figure out what I wanted to do next. And it took me about a year. That setback for my career, my TV career, was about a year to kind of get everything kind of reordered and rejiggered. And then things started to, as you know, things started to fall back in place. But that was a setback. That was a real moment where I had to ask myself some tough questions. And I had to face some really serious issues about what happened to NBC, what people did to me behind the scenes, and how I had no control over it, how there was no recourse. But then I had to move on and say that I am Ian, and I am bigger than this stuff, and I can be a success anywhere. And then I recovered. And I think that, but it was that time to sit there and ask, you asked about the bounce back. It was asking those serious questions. It was over at the Boulders in Arizona with my girlfriend at the time, now my wife. And we're sitting there. And oh, by the way, here's the funny part of it, by the way. I had just ordered a sports Mercedes. Okay. I had just ordered it off Park Avenue, right? And we're sitting there. I got no job, got no savings. And the dealership calls me and says, hey, your car's going to be in 3 weeks. No car.
You were like,
I can't take, I'm not taking delivery of it.
About that. So sorry. Okay. So there's so many threads in that, and so many threads, because I think that moment, I have seen that happen, especially in our business, especially to us. I don't know if it happens the same way for people who aren't Black in our industry, but I have seen that happen a number of times. And often people do this in their careers as well, where your identification of who you are is connected to your industry, to your company. And it is hard to extricate the two. And that's the reason why when people get fired or laid off or whatever from a particular job, it feels like the world is ending. It feels like a breakup. And people are telling you shouldn't feel that way because it's just work. But no, there are emotions in work. And when we end up identifying ourselves with stuff, we got to be real careful and real pristine about knowing who we are. Like, I've had that moment too. And it's interesting, even though our experiences at NBC weren't the same, I had that same moment where I turned down a contract renewal and everybody thought I was crazy. The only thing that saved me was that Katrina had just happened. So everybody was like, well, it's because of what happened to her family and what happened to her, her state and all of these things, that kind of stuff. Yep, you got to go do it. I think a lot of people thought I was going to come back crawling for my job, which I never did, because I realized, I learned where I wanted to be and what I wanted to do. My LA agent dropped me about 6 months after that happened, because nothing was happening quite right either. And it's fascinating to me, though, how the things we think are the end of us are often where we really learn what our worth is if we allow that moment to do it. And that's what I hear in that bounce back, is that it's digging deeper into you.
Yeah. It's interesting because it's easy for people on the outside to see a situation and to have all these opinions and all these suggestions. But there's a lot of stuff that happens internally that people don't realize. And things always look, I'll never forget, I was on the subway. I love taking the subway in New York, not so much anymore because of all the stuff going on. But when I lived in New York, I took the subway all the time. It's the fastest way to get in and around New York City, period. I'll never forget, one day I'm in the subway, on the train, heading downtown. And a lady says to me, Dr. Ian? I was like, yeah. She was like, you ride the subways? I'm like, yeah, I'm a New Yorker. How do you expect me to do well? You think I'd fly a helicopter? Like, she couldn't imagine that, my life would be one where, so the point is, how people see you and what they expect of you sometimes is very different than how you see yourself and what you expect of yourself. And you always have to be true to who you are, right? And I tell all my friends who are in media, by the way, when I see their Instagram handles or their Twitter handles and it says John Randall, NBC TV, don't ever do that. What happens when you leave NBC? Don't ever do that. You always have to identify yourself first, and then where you're working comes second. I just think you have to put yourself out front always.
Indeed. And, I wonder how your perspective is. So, because a lot of people don't know, or maybe, I don't know, how many people know that you're an identical twin?
Not a lot of people do, but not a lot. Most people don't know.
Okay, so I hope I'm not talking out of turn with that,
No.
because I remember when I met your brother the first, because like it was at an event, and I walked up and I'm like, and I just started talking to him like it's you, and he's like, you are not talking to who you think you're talking to, and I was like, what, excuse me, because at first, because the way he said it, I was like, what do you mean, Dr. Ian? I know you, and then you walked up, and I was like, oh my goodness. But I wonder how that impacts being who you are. Do you think that it is easier for you to see who you are because there is literally a physical copy of you that you guys had to come up together and find those differentiate? Because you guys, even though there are a lot of similarities, I now know the difference between the two of you now that I've, had a few conversations with your brother just in passing. I can see the personality difference. So you guys look different to me, and I don't even know how that works.
That's true. He's hipper, he's cooler, more laid. No, it's true. You are absolutely correct. That when you get to know someone even a little bit, how they carry themselves actually affects their physiognomy, what they look like, right? And so, no, having Dana, that's his name, having Dana is wonderful. I just said to my niece, his daughter, she was like, oh my goodness, you even laugh like daddy. And I'm like, listen, let me explain something to you. Your dad and I are one person literally split in half. We have a difference, but we are very similar. I mean, we are mirror images of each other. But it's helped me having him because he also is a great reflection for me. So I can I see myself better by looking at him. And I don't know if that makes sense, but
yes.
But looking and thinking about him crystallizes for me who I am, right? Because as twins, by the way, you're always, even though I love him, he's my best friend, you're always trying to set yourself apart, like make a distinction. And so, he's helped me crystallize more about who I am, but he's also been a great sounding board. We talk every day, several times a day, every day. And we call motivating each other. I just told him that I said, because my new thing is in 2023, I'm moving differently. Like, I'm serious. And I said to him the other day, I said, everyone is testing me. They're not getting it except for you. You're the only one who realizes I am moving differently this year. So no, he's a great sounding board for me, and he's been very helpful. And to be frank, Jeanne, I don't know how to live without a twin. I can't imagine not being a twin. Like, it's weird. I can't imagine being a singleton, and not having someone else who's just like you. It's a weird concept to me in reverse. You know what I mean?
But you know what the thing is, because I've had to do a lot of self-reflection, and here's the thing, I'm a singleton, I'm an only child, right? Jeez. So it's like, so my experience is kind of at the opposite end of the spectrum. And that's the reason why I think I tune into your development happening as part of being a twin. I know a few twins, mm-hmm. and I've always wondered that if you have this reflection from very early on, and because the thing is that I think a lot of people forget that everything that you encounter in some way is a reflection of you, right? Or something that you believe or what have you. And having that from birth, especially a genetic exact, right? So that's where you get to do the teasing out of the deep work real early. Like, I don't think a lot of us understand that. And I wonder how many twins have that feeling, but it's a lesson to us, though, to learn from the things that we see our reflections in, mm-hmm. and where we want to be different and where we are different, and like recognizing what that is. Because I think a lot of times we spend so much time trying to fit in that we forget the specialness of something we might think is mundane.
So let me give you some on that. Ready for this? So when you're a twin, particularly like us, we are close, identical twins. Physically, we're close, but also spiritually, we're close. You really, as much as you love your twin brother, you fight for your individuality. You fight for it. And so we divided up the world. Listen to this. We were raised partially by my grandparents. So each one of us got to choose a grandparent. So he chose my grandfather, I chose my grandmother. And that was who our role models were. He chose red, I chose blue. He chose that he wanted to be a professional basketball player, I chose I want to be a doctor. It had to be divided that way.
And y'all sat down and did this?
Yes, you divide it. And you accept it. So listen to this though. So I was always the science math guy. He was always, which is what you feel in him, the artistic, cool, hip guy. And so anything related to the arts was off limits to me because that's not who I was supposed to be. That's him. And so I was always this way, right? So fast forward to me developing this love for fiction. And I developed it in high school. I used to read books with my aunt who never graduated from high school, but she and I had a little book club. And she would say, Ian, you got to check out this book. And we would swallow books, Jeanne.
I love that so much.
And we still do it. So, and now she reads my books, which is great. So she and I had this little book club, and I loved what the books did to me, how they made me feel, the catharsis I went through. So I said in high school, geez, I want to be a writer, but I can't say that because my brother wants to be the artistic guy.
Because that's Dana's world.
It's Dana's world.
Oh.
So I hid it. And I used to write for myself, books and books. Right. And so finally I said to my girlfriend, who's now my wife, I said, my brother's going to be really upset at me. She goes, what are you talking about? I said, because like, I'm going to start doing like TV, film, all that kind of artistic stuff. And she's like, well, why would you be upset? And I explained to her that was his world. And it was very tough for me, Jeanne, to be able to say to him, hey, I'm going to do something in this lane. And he took it okay. I mean, I think he felt like it was a violation. I know it. He didn't articulate that, but I know he felt like, you doing all this great stuff over here. Why you got to come up into my joint? You know what I'm saying? But that's what I wanted to do. And I had to do it.
And here's the thing. If genetically you guys are the same, right? So I'm taking it to, I don't know anything but like the basic stuff I learned in high school and what I read on a regular basis. So physician, please correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like, if y'all are copies of each other, then whatever's in you is also in him, and whatever's in him is also in you. So I'm just waiting for his science, technology, engineering, or math to come out in the same way so that he can have that same experience of coming into your lane.
My brother was equally academically successful. He was as good in math as I was, as good as science. There was no separation in our academic prowess. It simply was, we decided, okay, Ian, you're going to be the doctor. You're the math science guy. But you're right. If he wanted to become a doctor, no question. We just decided that we were going to take, divide it up, and he goes that path, I go the other path. So, but we're good now. We're both. What's funny now is that we're both now doing creative stuff, and we have finally, over the last, believe it or not, just the last couple of years, we finally gotten to the place where I can talk creative with him, and him not feel like you don't know what you're talking about. That you don't even know right? Because for a long time, anytime I mentioned something creatively, he would big step me, like, oh yeah, you have no idea what you're way out of your league. Now we actually have he respects me creatively now.
You paid your dues. I paid
my dues.
Well, now one thing that you do really well is give advice. I mean, you've done it professionally, clearly. You also do it in service of others, the President's Council, on fitness and health, the boards you serve on, all these things. But I would like to know, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received? You talked about your grandfather, and that seemed more of a philosophy thing. I don't know if that would be it. But what is the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
My grandfather's given me no offense to my mother who's still alive, and my grandmother. My grandfather really was the spiritual and psychological guiding force of my life. I didn't grow up with a dad, and so he was my dad. But there are two things, and there are many, but I'm going to give you two things that always stuck with me. He said, boy at the time, boy. He said, sometimes you got to put pride in your back pocket and keep on walking. Jeez.
That's a word. That is a word.
To this day, that wisdom has helped me in so many situations. Okay. When I was getting ready to do something I shouldn't do, say something I shouldn't say, getting my feeling or something. Put pride in your back pocket, boy, and keep on walking. And the other thing he said was, when your hand is in the lion's mouth, you got to stroke him gently. But when it gets out of the lion's mouth, kick him right in his butt.
I love your grandfather. Oh my God.
So guess what? Cop stops you, your hand's in the lion's mouth. Stroke him gently. Stroke him gently. Now, when everything is over, then you take care of that with your lawyer. You take recourse in other ways. That's how you get him. But in his mouth, don't mess with him. He can bite your hand off. Don't let it go. I'm telling you. I wish I could write a whole book of my grandfather's saying. I might do that, actually.
I was going to say, that sounds excellent. I would buy it.
A small little book about how, it'd be called Lessons from an Old Black Man. How would that?
Love it. I love that. I love that, because let me tell you, most of the best advice I've gotten about business and work came from my father. Not talking about business and work, just life in general. And it's always those kind of things. Although my father was far more cryptic. He would say things like, stay right, not to be left. And I would be like, and to this day, it's like, there was one day I was just in the kitchen, putting up dishes or whatever, unloading the dishwasher. And I was like, wait a minute, hearing all those different things. And sometimes they're silly, but there is that element of truth in it,
yes.
That,
and they come back to you. They come back to you, right?
Exactly.
I tell my kids
when you need it.
I tell my kids, I wrote my 16-year-old kid on turning 16. He turned 16 a couple weeks. I wrote him a letter of 10 things I want him to always remember. And I said to him, these are things that my grandfather taught me. And at my age of 53, those things still apply in my life. So I want you to have these 10 wisdoms and keep this letter for the rest of your life and just read it sometimes. Just try to go back and just read a couple of points. Because these things, even though the first time you hear it, you're like, it's just an old man, going on and on and on. Then all of a sudden you're in a situation like, oh my goodness, that cat was right. He was right. So to this day, it guides me.
My mother wrote me a letter at 21 that I still have to this day that is very similar to that. Like this thing of, because it was right before I was about to graduate from college. She's like, okay, you're an adult now. You will always be my baby. But here's some things I've learned that you may have to learn still, but if I can make it easier for you, I will. And it's also some advice in here about how to live. And I think it was a list of like 10 or 12 things. It was, and I revisit that letter from time. It was hard for me to read it after she passed away. So it just kind of stayed in a box. But now I go back to it more often. And I'm glad you gave that to your son. Without divulging all of the things on there, what is the most essential piece of advice that you give to people that you think applies to anyone, like anyone, any situation? You've given out a lot already, so, but is there like a guiding principle that you have?
Passion. I think people have to understand and find their passion. I feel very bad for people who kind of go through life without passion for something. I'm not telling you what it needs to be about, but not having passion is, to me, almost like a hollow existence, And my advice to people is, if you can find passion and you can find what drives you, then it makes so many things easier and it makes life more fulfilling. Makes it more fulfilling. There's some things you're going to have to do that you're not passionate about, right? It's just part of life. But I really crowd my life and my days, like you said earlier, when you have all these different things that you do and you love doing all of them, and it makes the time fly by. And I'm so focused on each, just before this, I had a call with a huge writer in LA, and we are turning one of my novels, my second novel, into another TV show. And we're sitting there and just talking story with her because I'm so passionate about it. And it's my story I've written that she actually now has like indulged my story and she knows as well as I do. It makes me proud as a writer, but it's my passion, Jeanne. And I think that if people were more passionate about their life and more passionate about things in life, I think people would be happier. And I honestly, I know this may sound a little fuzzy, but I think that we would have less problems in the world. I think that people are unhappy people. And a lot of it is because they don't have passion and direction. gotta have direction. I told my kid, you gotta have direction. You know, you just can't be like an eddy out in the ocean, a current that keeps going around in the circle. You gotta have a direction. And sometimes that route may go off a little bit, which is fine. Detours are great. Detours, you learn detours, right? We both have had detours in our life, professionally and personally. So they're great. But at least you know where you want to go, though, right? I know where I want to go.
And that's the reason why I do this podcast, which you just said, is in the hopes that it, eventually makes the world better by making people's individual lives better. Because I do think that a lot of times where we go wrong is when we don't listen to that still small voice, right? When we don't, because in that still small voice, I think is the passion that's waiting to get out. But so many times, and I think there are a lot of institutions in our world that push those things down and indoctrinate you into thinking that what you want is something other than what's really in your heart. And so you distilled it so beautifully, but that's the reason why I do what I do. That's the reason why I like to tell stories. That's the reason why, I want to help other people tell their own stories and find what their passions are, because at the end of the day, you deal with people so much better. You deal with things so much better when you are doing what God put you here to do.
Yes.
I know you feel like you are doing what God put you here to do. But I have one question for you, though. What else do you dream of doing that you haven't done yet?
Oh, geez, that's easy.
Okay.
That's easy. I would like to do several things. I'm gonna give you 3 things that I'd like to do right off the top of my head. One, I would love to become a musician.
Oh.
I would like to play guitar or piano, and I would like to play in a small little indie, be good enough to play in a small little indie band and to be able to do performances, number 1. Number 2, I'd like to be an actor. I think, despite my kids and my wife, I think I'd be a great actor. I have taken acting classes. I've never said that publicly. Because I love the idea, and this is part of me being a storyteller, I love the idea of being able to allow yourself to get lost in another world and to get lost in something that in real life you never would be or experience. And so I would love to be an actor. And lastly, and I'm working on this too, I would love to be fluent in French.
Look at you, okay, with that je ne sais quoi.
That's right.
Parlez-vous and whatnot. Yes, sir. I love it. A polyglot, if you will.
That's right. Here you go.
Well, I'm going to say this about the acting piece. You're 100% right, because it's something I have dabbled in most of my career. And it's so funny because now that people are seeing me on shows and things like that, like not realizing I could never do that, not because not only contracts, but also just not having the time to be able to do it or the opportunity to do it. Now that I am able to do it, and even these just little roles or whatever, it is such a fun release, Ian. And that's what I loved about voiceover work and still do, is that even though that's in a different environment and it's shorter, you get to pretend to be something else. And actually not even just pretend it. It's like in your head, you become this other thing.
Yes.
And that brings it's just like putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. Like once you walk in it,
it's a great feeling.
Start auditioning, Ian. Just start doing stuff. You don't care what people think anyway, so go on and do it.
I really don't. Because
here's the thing. You could be like a little doctor on Chicago Med that just comes in for a consult or whatever, even if it's just that one, a one-day shoot, whatever. And the more of those you do, then they start trusting. Because like my first roles on TV, the only thing I could book were reporter roles. They would have me on a red carpet. They would have me doing this. And now I'm moved into mama roles. So,
okay. Right.
So start with the doctor, the reporter stuff. And then, just keep auditioning. And it starts to happen. Like I cannot wait to see the first thing of that. I cannot wait.
Well, I'm gonna tell you right now, God willing, if one of my projects actually hits the screen, you better believe I'm putting myself in something. It's going to be very, very small, but I'm going to be up in there. You can believe that.
I know that's real. Because when you write your own projects, baby, you get a whole lot of latitude.
There you go.
My final question that I always ask everyone is the one I'm going to ask you now. When do you feel? What are you doing? What are you experiencing? What do you feel like when you are at your best, truest, most authentic expression of yourself?
I think that when I am on vacation with my family and we are together and we are not scripted as far as scheduled, but we can do what we want to do and just explore and have fun and laugh and eat and sleep. I think that I am at my best. And it's a wonderful experience. We love to travel. We love going to Africa in particular, which we'll be going back to in June. But I think, and unfortunately, people don't get to see that side of me because it's very private. I like to keep it private. But I think that is not Dr. Ian. That's Ian Smith, the real, raw Ian Smith. And I think that's when I'm at my best, when I'm with my family and people I love. I love my family. I love my friends. I love them because I realized as a young kid that it's very difficult to establish and develop great relationships that are lifelong and meaningful. And so I am very blessed to have great friends of all walks of life, all over the world, and a wonderful family. So I think, Jeanne, that's when I'm at my best.
Ian, this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you sharing. That last thing you talked about sounds like one of the things I talk about, be brave, be free, be you. It's that freedom.
Yeah.
It sounds like free.
Freedom is a big word and people use it a lot, but a lot of people don't understand freedom, right? They don't understand it. And it's more than just, I get the chance to vote. Freedom is a lot more than that. And I wish everybody who listens to this podcast could really think about their own life and ask themselves, are they really free? And if they're not really free, what can they do to actually give themselves some freedom? Because when you're truly free, it's an exhilarating experience. Life is exhilarating. Even during the challenging times, by the way, it's still exhilarating.
Man, this has been great. Thank you so much. You live in fearless authenticity better than me. Sure.
No. Oh, by the way, follow me on social, you guys. It's at Dr. Ian Smith. Spell the doctor out, I-A-N Smith. I answer all my own DMs. So if you have questions about anything in life, give me a little time because I get a little busy, but I like to engage with people and interact with people.
You didn't just tell everybody slide in your DMs, Lord, today.
I didn't say that. That's a different. That expression means something different. No, I said send me a DM, which means if you have something you want to talk about.
That's right, baby. Let's parse out that language and make sure it's clear. Thank you, right. Ian.
I love you, Jeanne.
I love you right back, my baby. And another great episode in the books. I don't know if y'all enjoy this as much as I do, but I am learning a lot as we go along. Some of the highlights from Ian's conversation, that idea of the time when we meld our personal identity with what we do so intimately that we can't separate the two. I think that has hurt a lot of us along the way. And I think many of us, especially when you love what you do, that ends up creeping into your life and you have to be careful about it. But I also love that he figured out a process, right? This idea of establishing for yourself who you are and how that's going to be expressed through your job. So seeing the job as an extension of you, as opposed to being the core of who you are. And then being very conscious and intentional about whatever space you're in, holding true to that. Like going back to that story about med school and how he might not have been the typical student where he was at first, but still saying, you know what, this is what I need to be comfortable where I am, and wanting to have that balance and never being ashamed of who you are within that comfort and being proud of it, whether you're right or wrong, because you're going to make mistakes, but making them as yourself as opposed to what somebody else wants you to be, that feels a little more comfortable, at least to me. I also find it fascinating how being a twin helped him to establish who he is and understand who he is, that his twin Dana, his brother, is such a great reflection of himself. So he can look at it, see himself, and understand himself better, and also understand how to set himself apart better, and how they move together, that his brother gets him and how he doesn't know how he could go throughout life without that. I think we all have opportunities to have that relationship with the people that are around us and the world when we see the reflection of ourselves. And it's just whether or not we're willing to open our eyes and see it and then decide if that reflection is really what's inside of us, right? And then the last thing that hit me really succinctly was the freedom. Hoping that we all ask ourselves if we're really free. What does that mean to us? What does that look like? And then asking ourselves what we can do to give ourselves that freedom, that breathing space, that room. Because I think that's the room where we become fearless. That space is where we really step into our authenticity. Thank you, Ian, for helping us to see these things. Thank you for your time, your generosity, and your encouragement too. And I also appreciate you, my Fearless Authenticity listeners, for your attention and for your support. I couldn't do this without you. I also couldn't do this without my team. So thank you so much to the Fearless Authenticity production team. You do a great job and make my life easy. I hope that you will rate, review, download, subscribe, and share this episode wherever you get your podcasts, including on YouTube. And also, please join my community. You can find me at JM Sparrow on most social or at Ms. Jeanne Sparrow. Please drop me your comments, your questions, your thoughts, your suggestions whenever you see me out and about in the social world. This has been Fearless Authenticity with Jeanne Sparrow. Thank you, and I'll see you again soon.